Om Shri Sai Ram. Offering our most humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Swami, respected elders and office bearers, beloved teachers, and my dear brothers and sisters, let me extend a rather cool welcome on this hot evening for another edition of Samarpan. To make this evening really cool for all of us with his experiences of the divine, we have with us Brother Harishkrishan Balasubramanian, a name that needs no introduction amongst the Sai fraternity. Well, we all know the basics, and LinkedIn and social media does a fabulous job of keeping all of us current. But there was something else that I found out about Harish. He is an avid Kamal Haasan fan. As I mentioned, he needs no introduction. Then why am I here? I'm here today to give a slightly different context to Brother Harish's Samarpan. As we all know, a Samarpan session for every speaker is a Tera Tujhko Arpan kind of session, where he or she would give back to Swami what was initially given to them by Swami. But what is it for all of us assembled here as listening devotees? It is but a sadhana. A sadhana where during the session, intent listening will help us on our path and spiritual journey, where the experiences of the speaker would, through Swami, give us custom-made answers to our situations in life. Without further ado, let us all embark on our sadhana journey. I welcome Brother Harish. Jai Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer myself at Bhagwan's lotus feet. Most beloved Bhagwan, respected elders, sisters and brothers, Sai Ram to one and all. Sri Sathya Sai Brindavan. What does Brindavan mean for us? Students, alumni, teachers, devotees. For me, Brindavan is nostalgia. Ever since Krishna traversed from Brindavan to become a maker of kings, the people of Brindavan, the friends of Krishna, the devotees of Krishna, have all looked back at Vrindavan with a sense of nostalgia. Whether or not they have lived there, whether or not they have experienced Vrindavan themselves, the story of Vrindavan fills us with nostalgia. It was a great privilege that Swami introduced my talk through Brother C.P. Prajit. Brother Prajit and his elder brother Prashant, we all know as extremely active devotees and instruments of Bhagwan. In fact, Brother Prashant was one of the most silent workers in our batch. He was my classmate. So Prajit Brother was talking about LinkedIn. The amount of work which he has done before the era of social media was very high. And speaking of LinkedIn and nostalgia, the very first job that I have done, so-called job, was right there in the snack counter, selling samosas and Pepsi, Fanta, Sprite cocktails to students. Way back in 2005, under the able leadership of Ruchir Desai sir. He was my first boss, so to say, and the lessons I've learned from him are much higher than anything which I learned going forward in my career or wherever it is. And interestingly enough, I'm currently working in retail. Even as a Perthi student myself, I have not been a Brindavan student. But very frequently, we'll have batchmates who constantly talk about Brindavan's days as the most beautiful and cherished days of their life. And we would actually feel jealous. We would think that, Swami was with us in Puttaparthi for so many days. And he would visit Brindavan for a few months. And yet, the way Brindavan captured a place in the heart of every student was very unique. So any opportunity which we all got to associate ourselves with Vrindavan, we would. And spending time in Vrindavan here is very beautiful because it is in Vrindavan that we get a chance to go to Swami's house. So Swami would take us to Trai and we would have Trai sessions where a plethora of topics would be discussed. There will be days when Swami would be completely silent. We'll all be sitting in full silence. And the same silence would mean different things for different students. There will be some student thinking, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Did Swami find out about the mischief that I did yesterday? There will be another student who will be thinking, wonderful, what Swami is taking us all inwards. So this is the message for us in sadhana. This is where we need to go. We need to not only be silent in our mouths, we also need to be silent in our mind, and we should go more within. There will be another student who will use this opportunity to think about how to scam an extra chapati during the dinner that day. So each person would respond to the same silence differently. And then there would be other days where Swami would be in extremely jovial mood, and he will be pulling the leg of so many students on that day, and he would specifically make those who have absolutely no concept of bhava or tala to sing bhajans. And he would be very disappointed if a student sings bhajan properly, because the whole concept of the day was entertainment. So he would want students to sing like that. And there were some students who were very sharp in that. Even if they could sing with nice shruti on that day, they will purposefully sing in a way, to make Swami laugh. So what was happening in all those sessions? In all those sessions, we were all developing our own unique relationship with Bhagwan. Our own intimate relationship with Bhagwan. Because the same Bhagwan saying the same words and maintaining the same silence evoke different reactions in each and every one of us. And that is why Swami constantly says, my relationship with you is one-to-one, heart-to-heart. And that is extremely true. So what we are doing during these years in Brindavan is developing this relationship. And very frequently in our lives, the relationship which we think we are building and the relationship which we'll actually end up building will be very, very different. So I am here today to share with all of you the saga of how I turned from a devotee to a hero worshipper. Because our relationship with Swami is getting formed during these years. So enjoy this transformation. It's going to be intense. There are going to be days of absolute joy. There are going to be days where your heartstrings are going to get pulled. There are going to be days where even tears would not come out of your eyes when you are feeling extreme emotion. But understand this, our hearts are in His hands, and He is chiseling a relationship for each and every one of us. A relationship which we will carry with us through the stretch of our lives. A kind of relationship which we cannot imagine, a kind of relationship which we did not come here thinking we are going to form. So those are the days that we are having here. And these are, believe it or not, the best days of our life. Talking about chiseling, let me actually start my talk on All Fools Day of 2005. So on April 1st, 2005 was the day after we finished our MBA course in Prashanthi Nilayam. And April 2nd was my first job interview. So April 1st, I'm sitting in Darshan, waiting for Swami to come so that I can give him a letter saying, thanking him for the wonderful 2 years of my MBA, and to take leave for my job interview on April 2nd. So this was the context of the darshan. So the darshan was interesting in many ways. It was, for all purposes, I was thinking that it's going to be my last darshan as a student, because most of you must have been to Prashanthi Nilayam, you would know where is the old students block. It is one of the saddest places to sit in Prashanthi Nilayam. You would sit behind the stage on the right, and from there you cannot even have Swami's darshan properly when he's sitting on the stage. So before being relegated to an old student, it was the last opportunity to have his darshan as a student. So I'm just going to read out to you something which I had penned in my diary as I was sitting down for the darshan. I was excited, I was nervous. I was happy, I was sad. I was ready, I was a wreck. I was grateful, and I was sorry. I was new, and I felt so old. I was here, but I was not. Bhagwan was coming for darshan. He was moving too slow. Come fast, Swami, my heart sang. I want to give you this letter and see you eye on eye for maybe the last time. Will I ever get such a chance again? He was moving too fast. Slow down, Swami. Let me relish every aspect of your persona. Your smile, your frown, your curious indifference, your chuckle, your mock anger, the way you take the letter, the way you lift up your curls just for it to mischievously drop right back on your face, the way you lift your handkerchief, the way you keep it back, the way you shower your love, your love, your love, your love. Is it really the last day? Can I not be your student anymore? Will I be relegated to be seated among the old students when I return? I love you, Swami. I love you, Swami. I love you, Swami. So Swami was walking for his darshan. As he crossed me, I could not give my letter to Swami. But somehow it did not matter. Somehow, when we experience something, thinking that it is probably for our last time, the intensity that we feel is probably much, much more than what we do on our day-to-day life, taking things for granted. I felt so refreshed, so elated. And yet, something was gnawing in my heart, thinking that, is this not going to last? But what was this? Swami did not enter the interview room, as would be his typical route after he finishes his darshan. Instead, he walked onto the stage and sat on the sofa. I was sitting on the third line, but directly in front of him. This was an unexpected treat. I was sitting there gazing at him, almost not even noticing the fact that he beckoned me with his fingers. Some people next to me had to push me, saying, Swami is calling you. So I got up and went to him and gave him the letter. He took the letter, being absolutely clear that nothing in that letter actually matters. He just dropped it in his lap without even opening it. And then asked me these words, where is your warden? Our warden then was Professor Shivashankar Sai sir, who some of you might know recently accepted his retirement. But then and now he always looks younger than all of us. So Shivashankar Sai sir had then gone for a cross training to a different university. And just before he went, I happened to be visiting his office to take permission to sit in a specific place in Kulwanthal. You read all those messages in your social media that God does not give you a question for which He has not already given you the answer. So this was something similar. So I had gone to his office for a totally different purpose. But he was on the phone speaking to somebody else, giving them the full itinerary of what his plan was for that summer. So he was to go to 2 other universities where he was going to get the cross-trained, because that was a requirement of UGC those days. And he was to finish those, and he was supposed to come back on such and such date. So with all that knowledge having subconsciously, unconsciously entered into me, I was blurting out those words as if I was his travel agent. But those words were coming through me, but I was not conscious of those words coming out. Instead, in my mind, there was this bulb which was glowing, which a word which many of you would have heard and aspired to as a student. And that word is form. A form is basically, for those of you who may not be aware, is a typical Sai student terminology. A form is when a cricket batsman is able to see the cricket ball as big as a football. A form is a time when an actor is able to come in front of the camera and live the role without even having to think about what dialogues to crack. Form with Swami is something like that, but a lot more. It is basically a scenario where Swami would talk to you a little bit more than the typical student, but somehow make you feel a little bit more special. And during my 2 years with Swami, which is of course extremely slow compared to what most of my classmates had gone through, Swami had definitely given a few interactions, but that would be like very transactional. So I'd give him a letter, he would take it. Sometimes he would say, give a response. Sometimes he would go sit. Sometimes Swami had given me opportunity to give a talk. He had responded to the talk, but that would be it. But here I was giving him a letter saying that I'm leaving. But he's starting a new conversation with me, which is totally different. So armed, or should I say formed with this courage, I told him that, Swami, my parents are here. So Swami said, oh no, very happy. Tomorrow I will talk to you. So there went all my plans. Man proposes, God disposes. So as soon as Swami went inside the interview room, I ran towards the devotee side, found my dad. And then I told him, Appa, Swami has said he will talk tomorrow. So, and again, these 2 months that we get during summer holidays, that is the last chance that we have to sit in third block as students. So, let me be here during these 2 months. Job we can always find. So I will after those 2 months, whenever Swami starts the next year, then I will come back and then I'll find a job. So I was an extremely spoiled child. My parents would agree to anything which I said, and he said, okay, do what you want. And so we came back, and that day Swami took Aarti and left. So the next day I was again sitting with my letter ready to inform Swami that parents are here, and to, maybe expecting Swami to call them for an interview or whatnot. Not that, of course, I deserved to ask Swami for anything, but at the same time, when Swami gives an opportunity, we should not let go. So I was there, standing, holding my letter like this. So Swami came the next day, stopped his golf cart in front of me. And I was getting ready to, be summoned. And then Swami said, "Cover lo pettu." Put it inside a cover. And then he left. I remember writing on the diary that day saying that, "Swami, your sense of humor is horrible. You said you will talk to me, and this is all that you talked to me on that day." But again, like everything that Swami says, there are so many levels of meaning. So that prayer itself had to be put inside, internalized. And we should wait for its fruition to come. Because one thing which I realized is that every desire which comes in our heart for Swami is a desire that Swami has given because he has already fulfilled it in the future. Very often we confuse our cause and effect. We think that we did something and therefore we are getting something in return. But very frequently, at least it appears, that when Swami has decided to give us something, he also prepares us in advance so that we ask for it at the right time. So these days, beautiful days were going. And then the murmurs started. The murmurs during summer would be that of Kodaikanal. So the Kodaikanal was considered the pinnacle of the student journey. Again, depends on whom you ask it. Swami himself would probably call it as a trip for those who required a serious operation theatre attention. So Swami describes Prashanthi Nilayam as a lunatic asylum. So people come there with all kinds of diseases. There are some who would probably just need to visit the doctor once. Sometimes we have like a chronic cold or something which wouldn't go. We just go sit in the doctor's office. Even before the doctor comes, we feel better and we come back. Some people require just that. There are others who probably just need a reassuring word from the doctor, saying that, see, if you take medicine, it will get cured in a week. If you stay at home, it will get cured in 7 days. So you could do either way. And with those words, this patient would come back and they would recover in the given amount of time. There are others who would require a little bit of a medication, a packet of vibhuti, and that's it, they are cured. And then they go back to the mission that they are supposed to do in that particular life. There are some others who need to get admitted. And they are all of us, students. So we need to be admitted, and we need to be looked at closely, monitored, fence built around us, so that we build the necessary muscles, we build the necessary mental strength, so that we can go back to the world and serve him the way we are meant to serve. But then there are those who are not sufficient if they are admitted. They need to be taken to the ICU, and some even worse, to the operation theatre. So depending on who you ask, it is either a symptom of the greatest disease or a sign of the greatest grace to be called to Kodai. But nevertheless, some students deliberately become mischievous so as to get Swami's attention. And in those categories, we all fell. And so we all wanted to get into that category of being a Kodai student. So who would typically go into the Kodai list? There would be these singers who are sitting in the front. There would be these instrument players who have been like playing on a regular basis. There will be those Vedam chanters who are chanting Vedam constantly every day. And you know that Swami can show off these students to his devotees. These are my boys. Then there would be those prolific speakers who would be able to talk in depth about Advaita, and who could quote pages from Satyam Shivam Sundaram talking about what Swami did on what day. In fact, I remember one of my seniors who would talk about Swami's interactions with Sakama with so much detail that Swami looked at him and asked, "Nu appudu nunchi unnavara? Were you there from those times?" But such was his intent of research that today he is leading one of the big research organizations in India. But apart from all these different categories of accomplished students, there would also be these intensive care and operation theatre students who Swami would take along. And that is the category for which those of us who knew we are not in those accomplished categories would be hoping for. So you would see students who would typically be going late for darshan would be there early with proper nice vibhuti and stuff like that, sitting in front and trying to get Swami's attention to say, "Swami, please think about us during these days." So in that category, out of absolute mercy, Swami had picked my name also that year. So till that date, I had entered the portal of Prashanthi Nilayam as a confused devotee. If I have to give an adjective about my relationship with Bhagwan, I would call myself a devotee because I would imagine Swami only during his darshan. So when Swami came for darshan, for me Swami appeared. And after darshan, Swami disappeared. Even the thought that Swami exists in, as in a human form, in his house, he would probably be having his dinner, he'll probably be brushing his teeth. Those thoughts would never even enter my head. I would say confused because I am constantly confused. And that is probably an adjective for life. But after this incident happened, or this admission to the operation theatre happened, Swami had to kind of initiate surgery. And before surgery, there is always anesthesia. So I'm going to talk to you now about the anesthesia session which happened. And that happened in Prashanthi Nilayam itself. So all these students who were selected for Kodai, we were all asked to come and sit in Bhajan Hall. And that was the day when we are going to be given the details about when we are going to go and, in all those instructions. So all of us students, some teachers who had the opportunity to not only take care of students in the general ward, but also have to take care of them in the ICU, they were also being asked to sit in the Bhajan Hall. And there were also a few select devotees and even a couple of doctors whom Swami had handpicked for the trip. And we were all sitting in the bhajan hall. All that happened that day was Swami walked inside the bhajan hall, the same way that he walked in every other day. He came and he sat on his throne. But as he walked in, what walked out of my heart was devotion. I was suddenly not able to see him as Swami. Suddenly, a strange man in orange robe was walking in. And he was sitting in the throne. And something inside my heart was saying, run, run, run. I was not understanding what was happening. But fortunately, the intellectual part of my brain was trying to tell me that, see, what happened now is not a consequence of anything. It is not because of something someone said. It is not because of something you read. It is not because of something you witnessed. It is something inexplicable. Therefore, it is probably something that Swami is doing. So with that doubt, I continued to sit in the bhajan hall. Also probably because I am constantly confused. So Swami sat there and he called one of the devotees who has accompanied Swami on many trips, who was also a former student, to stand up and tell all of us about the details of the trip, how we should prepare for the trip and all that. So that student got up and dutifully mentioned all that we have to do. I was sitting there completely anesthetized. And this continued. The day of the trip came and we all went to the airport. So we all sat in the flight and Swami walked in the middle of the flight as the flight was 15,000 feet above the air. And he would interact with all of us. That's what we call the high-flying darshan, which we all had. And Swami came near me and looked at this scar which was there just in my forehead and asked me what happened. So I said, Swami, it was an road accident when I was in 3rd standard. And I said, Swami, you only saved me. Then Swami smiled and tapped me and went. And yes, he had. So that's probably a story for another day. But despite the fact that I mentioned that to Swami, it was still in my heart that feeling of devotion was not coming. So I was wondering what is happening. So we got down in Madurai and we all went to the house of a devotee and who fed us as much as we could eat. And in case that is not enough, he also loaded the bus which was going to take us from Madurai to Kodai with a lot of snacks to be had on the way. So we traveled by bus, and as we were going up those ghat roads, we were singing bhajans, we were talking to each other, recounting experiences. And as our emotions surged, so also did the bile surge in some of our fellow students. And we had to stop the bus in a couple of places. But what that also did is it gave us opportunity to take some very scenic photographs, carefully avoiding the throw-ups on the side of the road. As we kept going, ascending up and up the hill, our mood was getting lifted. Yes, the vacuum in my heart was still as strong as before. But yet, with the lighted mood and with the beautiful weather of Kodaikanal, I knew that a surgery was imminent, but I couldn't have asked for a better view than this. So we went to Kodai. And as we entered inside Sai Shruti, Swami was already there. He was there to receive us, and then he would very carefully instruct us that, see, all the pillows are kept here, the blankets are kept here. And for me being the first time, I was thinking that probably there is a hostel or quarter somewhere nearby where we are going to go and stay. But then Swami said, okay, this is the house, you can sleep wherever you want. We were all shocked. Not all of us, some of them were stalwarts who had been there for many times back, but those of us who were coming for the first time, we were all shocked to know that we were all going to be sleeping in Swami's own house. So we all picked up our pillows and blankets, and we found places for us to lie down. And we had very beautiful interactions. Swami would speak to us multiple times during the day. And during one of those sessions, Swami called me inside to the kitchen. And he was there with a tray of watches in his hand. Most of you have definitely had awareness sessions where you all been described what watch means in Swami's parlance. And this was a tray full of watches. I should have known. I should have understood the symptoms. Swami called me inside and gave the tray to me, asked me to hold it. He looked at me deep in the eye, showed his finger towards me, and he said, "You are mine. You are mine." What powerful words. What beautiful words. And yet, what my mind was saying is, oh no. Am I getting trapped? This was the thought which was coming in my mind. So I held the tray of watches, and then Swami came out and distributed these watches to every one of the students. And that is again, I'm going to go back to my diary as to describe those days in Kodai. I'm going to use the crutch of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It was the best of times. Swami was practically interacting with me at least once an hour when he was with us. It was the worst of times. I would react to him superficially without any emotion at all. It was the age of wisdom. Swami was meticulously dissecting high philosophies and simplifying things for us. In fact, there was a day where we started discussing sages. We started discussing about the philosophies of Aurobindo, of Ramana Maharishi and all that. And Swami would patiently simplify it for us in the ways by which we need to comprehend it. It was the age of foolishness. I was constantly thinking, what does he want from me? Why is he trying to impress me? Funnily, the utter insignificance of me in front of his life and his mission was blind to me at those times. It was the epoch of belief. Swami was having an unreasonable belief that even an nincompoop such as me required his love, or rather deserved his love. It was the epoch of incredulity. He was also working on the ignorance of my ignorance, and I was ignorant of it. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, and it was the winter of despair. It was not an easy surgery. The peak of the surgery happened on one of the days when we as students, we took turns with serving duty for lunch. So that day I was fortunate to have the duty of serving lunch. So after all the students had eaten, the students went and sat in the other hall where Swami would interact. And then when the serving boys were going to the hall, Swami looked at me and stopped me. So I stayed back and the other serving boys went. Then Swami called me and said, "Okay, when are you leaving?" Now here I was as I mentioned to you many times, I was eternally confused. So the thought in my mind was, this trip to Kodai is like considered the epoch of a student's life, right? And the warning which was constantly given to us by teachers is that please make sure that you behave well during these times. In fact, before this anesthesia, I remember that a teacher had told that in Kodai, everything and anything is available, even self-realization. So make sure that you use this trip to the maximum possible extent. Somehow, as he was saying this, a random quote which Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had mentioned in one of his books came to my mind, where he had said that, the mother, in her infinite mercy, gives anything that her children asks. She even grants self-realization with her left hand. But it is to a very select few that she gives the ability to love her. Somehow that phrase came to my mind and I was thinking that, Swami, that is what I want from this Kodai trip. I had not realized the open heart surgery which was needed for making this happen. So with all this in my mind, it was like, I did not want to be a student who left Kodai before Swami leaves. So the standard practice is that you come back with Swami, and Swami comes to Brindavan, and after coming to Brindavan, we take Swami's instructions, and then some students Swami allows to stay back and work in the trust or work as a teacher in Swami's hostel or in the hospital or wherever Swami assigns. Some other students he tells them to go out and interact with society. So that was the path in my mind. I was like, I want to go back with Swami. So more than being good, the need to look good is very high for all of us. So we had to look good, we had to come back with Swami, and afterward take his leave and then go. So that is the path in my mind. So to use that path, I had to give a date which felt like it was long enough that by that time we would have left Kodai and gone back to Vrindavan. So fortunately such a date was readily available, and I said, Swami, I think I will go after May 16th. Because incidentally my father had then gone to Sri Lanka on a business trip, and my mother had gone to Pune on an office trip. So there was nobody home. So I kind of told Swami, this is what is the situation, so there's nobody home. So I will go after May 17th. So Swami listened to that, I think it was 17th, I may be misremembering those dates. And Swami said, somehow for some reason during the most important times, Swami spoke to me in Hindi. And he said, मैंने तुझे itna diya, तूने नहीं समझा. By my accent, you probably realize that Hindi is not my first language. And for others for whom it is not, what Swami said is, I gave you so much, you did not understand. Fortunately, along with that so much, he also gave me the wisdom to respond to him saying, Swami, you should only make me understand. So Swami tapped me and asked me to go and sit in the hall. So I went and joined all the other students, and I was sitting in the hall. So then Swami came and he sat in the sofa and he gave us the silent treatment that I was talking to you all about. And again, each and every student had their own interpretation of what that silence meant. But what really was the culmination of the surgery for me was the end of silence. He gave out a huge sigh after about, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. The time seemed to stretch infinitely. He gave a huge sigh and uttered in his breath the date which I mentioned as the date I was planning to leave. It almost felt that Swami was very pained that that date was coming. And when those words came, it also felt like somebody had taken a finger into the absolute depth of my heart and given me a tight pinch. Swami went back to his room. And as the students were going back to their various places, I came out of Sai Shruti and walked to the side of Sai Shruti where there was a beautiful garden. There are so many rose flowers there. At those times, one of the only spiritual books I had read was The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. Again, now when I look back at it, I will probably not call it a spiritual book, but it definitely had a deep impact on me on those times. And one of the things which was written in that is that God exists in every atom, in every flower, in every petal, and so on. So with those words coming to my mind, I sat in the garden and I looked at one of the flowers and I started talking. I spoke and I spoke and I smoked and I nagged and I nagged and I nagged. The flower almost withered out of absolute boredom. But finally, something broke in my heart. The ice cold dam broke open and the water gushed out through my eyes in an endless stream. And with that also the words came out. I want to be with you, Swami. I want to serve you, Swami. I do not know where those words came from. There was no indication that Swami had given that he wanted to give me the opportunity of personal service to him. But those words came out. And as those words came out, I could feel my emotions, my mind and my heart soar to a different height. But at that moment, the devotee might have got transformed, but the confused still remained. And the thought came, and immediately before I could lose that connection, I told to Swami, Swami, for me at this moment, I'm 100% sure that this conversation that I had was between me and you. But I also know that after 10 minutes, I will start thinking that I imagined the whole thing. So here is the deal. So I already told you, I've already answered your question about the question which Swami would repeatedly ask, when are you leaving? That, Swami, I want to stay with you and I want to serve you. So I've already answered that question. So if it was really you who heard this answer, then till the last day of the trip, you should not ask me, when are you going back? And true to the unsaid word, till the absolute last day, Swami did not ask me, when are you going back? And just to mock me on the last day before we all were boarding onto the bus, he looked at me and said, when are you going back? Gave a smile and then went on to the car. So at the end of the culmination, at the culmination of this process, is it that now I had complete devotion? Is it that now I had complete faith? Fact of the matter is, it stopped mattering. It did not seem very important to me at that stage that I need to have devotion. And yet the confusion continued. So if it is not devotion, then what is it that I need to have with Swami? So we came back to Brindavan. So those were days of a high, and those were the days which was the reverse of Kodai. Swami would not speak to me at all. So we would come as students and we'll come and sit there in that corner, and Swami would go, give darshan and go. And when he went to Trai, I think, unless I'm mistaken, one of the first sessions, the specific instruction was, ask the Kodai boys to come last. So all the other students would go, and then the Kodai boys would go in the end. And Swami would not talk a single word to me. But my heart was fully buoyant. I was filled with joy. I had absolutely no confusion about what I need to do, whether I'm in the right place or not. The only confusion which still existed was what my relationship with him was going to be. But that continued for some time. And with confusion also comes restlessness. So unlike some students who are able to just sit silently during those days, like after coming back with such close interaction with Swami in Kodai, they would come and spend many hours just sitting and contemplating those days. But mine was a restless mind. I had to keep myself occupied. So I had made a very good friend then with Ruchir Sai sir, and I went to him and said, "Sir, give me something to do." So then he said, "Okay, you come to the stall and you start working there." So I used to finish darshan, go to the stall, and then have very interesting interactions with so many devotees who were all on their own different individual paths with Swami, and you could see how each and every relationship was unique and different. So I probably needed that during those days to kind of understand those different relationships. And at the end of the Brindavan trip, Swami, once he went to Prashanti Nilayam, so I would travel back to Prashanti Nilayam the next day, and as soon as Swami in Parthi, he again started talking to me. And then within a couple of days, he just called me one day, and those days Swami had started using the chair. Once he got down from a golf cart, he would sit in a sofa chair, and Swami would come to the stage. So then he called me close, he spoke to me a couple of words, and then he said, "Okay, take the chair and go to the interview room." So that is how very non-apparently, in a non-grandiose way, I got kicked in, as the student terminology goes, into Swami's service. And the first few days again was the days when you could literally ask Swami any question. So I took courage, and I went to him and asked him those very words, to saying, "Swami, I am not feeling devotion towards you." Just imagine the space that Swami gives you. Many of us grew up, unless your parents were Sai devotees themselves, when you were born, many of us grew up with Deva Bhiti and Papa Priti. We'd have fear of God and a love of all things mischievous. So we all grew up God-fearing. and loving the attractions of the world. But a few minutes with Bhagwan and he will break that. Because he is literally walking love. It is physically impossible to not love him. It is. I mean, you may go through phases where the way your love expresses will be different. And each and every one of us will go through those phases. It is not going to be your old 2 years plus the rest of your life of honeymoon. It is going to have its ups and downs. But that feeling of love towards him is such a natural feeling. So in that space, you lose all fear for God, and then you are able to get into the space where you are able to ask him these fundamental questions. So the thought which was going in my mind was, if I told him something like this, then Swami would not have any choice but to show himself to me as Rama or Krishna. And then I can hold on to that, and if somebody asks me tomorrow, why are you Sathya Sai Baba's devotee, I can say, the Swami showed himself to me as Rama, Swami showed himself to me as Krishna, and I can go and talk about that in all Sai centers. But instead, I told Swami, మీ పైన శ్రద్ధ తగ్గుతా ఉంది. Again, with my confusion, also stretched towards language. So the word which I said and the word which I meant were totally different. And then Swami said, Ante? What do you mean? Then I said, Swami, I am not able to see you as God. Then Swami said, Avuna. Then he was silent for a second. He said, Prema unda. Do you have love? I said, Undi Swami, Prema undi. Then Swami said, Prema unte chalu. If you have love, that is enough. So faith can be shaken. But love is a constant presence. You have to work towards building your faith. You have to work towards building your devotion. But love is experienced. And it is a feeling which we know is always there in the back of our mind. All right. So, relationship is love. Then why should we do any sadhana? What is the purpose? So what is the purpose of in every one of our life? What is it that we want? A student came to Swami and asked Swami, Swami, eppudu anandanga undala Swami. Swami, I want to be always happy. And Swami looked at him and said, eppudu anandanga undala. Always want to be happy. Bhagavat chintana, Bhagavat smarana. ఇవి రెండు పెట్టుకో, ఎప్పుడు ఆనందంగా ఉంటావు. The thought of God and chanting His name and chanting His glory. Keep those two with you. You will always be happy. The student was still not satisfied. He said, Swami, that constant need to tell your name, that also you should only give. Then Swami replied, I have already planted the seed. I have already planted the seed in each and every one of you. But you have to put the water. And how to put that water? Bhagavad Chintana, Bhagavad Smarana. With those beautiful words, in the most nostalgic of places, I thank Swami for every experience he gives each and every one of us in this most sacred of places. The experiences that he gives by looking at us. The experiences that he gives by hiding from us. The experiences that he gives by talking to us. The experiences that he gives in silence. The experiences that he gives in the waking state. The experiences that he gives after putting us into sleep. Oh, the greatest of webmasters, make us aware that our succor is only at your feet. We do not need to struggle to get out of this web, because this web itself is of your own making, and you yourself will come and take us in the right direction at the right time. Offer my immense gratitude to Bhagwan for constantly being our guide, for constantly being our friend, and for constantly being our hero to whom we every day aspire to whistle to. Thank you, Swami. Thank you, Swami.
Sri Sai Ram. After such a wonderful talk, as always, as every MC would say after every Samarpan, I have no words to conclude. So I'm going to fall back on the same words and say, I have no words to conclude this talk. But a few key things that I picked up during this, and I'm sure each one of us would have picked up our own messages. Brother Harish mentioned, man proposes and God disposes in his context. But at the end of the talk, I realized man proposes what God wants and God accepts the proposal. That's the way we are supposed to go through with life. Prior to getting this opportunity to be the MC for this talk, I was given a few materials that I could use to prepare. One of them was a blog that Brother Harish had written a few years back, which had a lot of these experiences that he quoted today. And in one of those blog articles, he had written a very pithy statement that caught my eye. I even sent it back to him and a few others. It said, God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. I was just thinking for myself, it's such a heavy statement. So relating it back to Brother Harish's talk, he was saying, finally, I got a chance to be in Swami's service, which is in the student parlance saying, I became a farm boy. But relating it back to this statement, saying God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. A statement from cricket comes to my mind. Form is temporary, class is permanent. There is no point for Swami to call a Ramakrishna Parahamsa or a Vivekananda who are already realized. He calls people like us and makes us a class apart. And one that definitely gives me and several others who have assembled here the strength is that Swami has planted the seed. Many times in our lives, when we go through the ups and downs, we sometimes think, has Swami really vanished? Is he not going to show us his hand? Then we know that the seed is planted. We are the people who need to water the seed. As is the duty of the MC, I would want to propose a formal vote of thanks. A vote of thanks, I would say, is gratitude. Gratitude to this august place, Brindavan. Brindavan today is like a home. And like every home, it's a family. In the family, we always have elders, our grandparents, our parents, whom we respect. So I offer my respects to all the elders here in Brindavan from the various institutions that form Brindavan today, the hostel, the university, Trai, the Brindavan Management Committee, and the elders who perform roles in this for having made this evening such a wonderful one. Going back to the example of home, a home is filled and never complete without the mother or the ladies in them. A heartfelt thanks and gratitude to all the Mahilas who were involved in making this program a success. And last but not the least, I would thank each and every devotee who's assembled here who have embarked on their journey and sadhana listening to the Samarpan talk. I would request Assistant Professor, Department of Biosciences, Sri Ashok Agraharam, to felicitate Brother Harish with a bouquet. I would request our respected Director Sir of Brindavan Campus, Shri Shivakumar Sir, to felicitate Brother Harish with a shawl.
जय जगदीश हरे स्वामी सत्य साई हरे भक्त जना संरक्षक भक्त जना संरक्षक पति महेश्वरा ओम जय जगदीश हरे शशिवदना श्रीकरा सर्वा स्वामी सर्वा प्राणपते आश्रित कल्पलतिका आपद्बान्धवा ओम जय जगदीश हरे माता पिता गुरुदैवमु मरियन्तयो नीवे स्वामी मरियन्तयो नीवे नाथ ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नाथ ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नागेन्द्राश नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा शांति 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 समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई